This week on Wild Talk, Charles Whitwell from Howl.org joins us to break down the big wins for science-based wildlife management in Colorado and Florida, and what these victories mean for the hunters nationwide. Then, we're exploring the rugged terrain of the Pacific Northwest with Sarah Gamache as we dive into blacktail and elk hunting in some of the most challenging landscapes in North America. Plus, our friend Kate Rundle is back with her epic social segment. We've got Kifaru in a spotlight you won't want to miss. Stay tuned. This is Wild Talk.
Wild Talk is brought to you by Aventura, Timber Stove, Hornady, and Wild TV Plus.
We are back with more Wild Talk. I'm your host, Steve Hamilton.
We are back at it for another social segment on Wild Talk.
Welcome back to Wild Talk. We've got a great guest that we're following up with. Been some huge results out of the United States with the election. Great big wins for wildlife. And I've got a guest that we've had on before to follow up. A big part of the reason things have changed. So Charles from Howl.org, thanks for coming back.
Thanks for having me on. Looking forward to the conversation, Steve.
Yeah, this huge wins. You and I started to talk a little bit back and forth before the record button was hit. And you've just come back from guiding. How was that? Where was that?
That was in South Dakota. I left on the 3rd of November, so before all of the elections, all of them really. Is a big presidential year, and obviously the propositions and different amendments we were working on in different states. But I kind of checked out on the 3rd. I was just saying, there was nothing more that I could do, and I needed a break. And I just got back yesterday and guided some clients up there and had a good time, and folks were successful. And I just got back last night. So this is actually the first time outside of my kind of family and super close friends that I've really talked about any of this. I've just kind of shut it all out because I knew once I came back, I'd be doing enough talking. So here we are. Yeah.
Let's dig right into it.
Sure.
Big U.S. election just happened.
Yep.
Total changing of the guard there.
Yep.
And Colorado shut down 127. That's a huge win.
That's one way to put it. I mean, for us, that was the biggest thing that we've worked on in the last year. And I think what really put Howl on the map and for a lot of people, we got so much exposure because of it, because frankly, up until about 2 months ago, you wouldn't have heard about Prop 127 from anybody besides Howl or CRWM, which is ran by Dan Gates. And so about a year ago, more than a year ago now, last September is when we were first aware of what's now called Prop 127. At the time, it was Initiative 91. And our job was basically to make everybody aware of this, what it meant, what the implications were. And then I worked extremely close with Dan Gates to get him what he needed. And in that case, they didn't have they had a social media account. It had like 300 followers or something. Nobody was running it at all. So initially we got out all the information through Howl until they could get somebody running their social media. What we did was, just so many things. We have a large, I guess, influencer group of people, from Cameron Haynes to Meat Eater to you name it. We basically asked them and got them in contact and got them on board with whoever, with Dan or whoever else it was. Get them on your podcast, help come to these events, help talk about the issues to your folks, to really nationalize this issue. And then of course through our social media and our email and our, I think we have 43,000 supporters now. We were able to get the support on the hunting side of things, so everyone is educated on what's going on specifically in Colorado, and then specifically the residents of Colorado who are hunters. And then once we had a good foundation of those folks, so everyone was super grassroots orientated, and as far as social media and sharing messages and sharing podcasts and being able to talk to their neighbors about the issues. And then they ran a giant yard sign campaign, which ended up being, I don't know, 17,000 signs, I think, spread out through Colorado. And then the next step was public education. So the non-hunters in Colorado. So how do we reach them? So there was a lot of targeted ads, a lot of, geofencing, to get people in Colorado to know, hey, however you feel about hunting or what, here's the facts. At the end of the day, all of that really came together, and they ended up winning by a little over 10 points, which was fantastic. To get that win, I really didn't know what it was going to be. I had no clue.
Yeah.
I wasn't involved in the polling, and even the polling was like, it's either going to be a really close or it's going to be a big win. Like that's,
Yeah.
even after the fact, I talked to the guy running the issues committee, Mark Truax, and I said, all right, Mark, I don't know if you've been telling me everything. He goes, no, it was going to go one of two ways. It was either going to be razor thin close or we were really going to win. And they really won because people showed up and, to vote, and the general public, they showed up, and this was a win for science-based wildlife management. And that's what it really was. It wasn't necessarily about, if you could get people to think this isn't about lions or bobcats, this is about science-based wildlife management. Who should those decisions be in the hands of? That's the real question, right? And that's the question that was answered. And that really went our way. It was amazing.
It did. It shows the power of a proper education campaign and using science to educate those that don't know. We're never going to turn the ones that are rabidly anti-hunting. They're set in their ways, just like hunters are set in their ways. It's the ones sitting on the fence that you guys have seemed to reach that showed up and went, you know what? I may not hunt. I may not agree with hunting, but science-based wildlife management always needs to be front of mind. That, to me, is spectacular. So talk a little bit about, for those that don't know, what 127 was proposing and why it's so important to turn science into it.
So it would have banned any type of hunting at all. So not just dogs, not just trapping, any type of take of mountain lion or bobcat. And it also had lynx in there as well, which is already federally protected in the United States. I think save Alaska, but Alaska's that's a different story. But in the lower 48, it's federally protected. And they say that was in there. They now say that was in there because in case it was ever overturned, then lynx would be protected. But yeah, so it just would have banned it outright. And it would have defined as well, I think, because their entire messaging was trophy hunting. We have to end the trophy hunting of lions. We have to end the trophy hunting of bobcats. And there was just so many claims made on that. Bobcats are sold for $1 to China. And I'm going, who is selling a bobcat for $1 and then to China? Like, where's the stuff coming from? So
it doesn't happen.
A lot of claims were made, but at the end of the day, you could replace mountain lions with any other species, because CPW really does have tons of staff that works for them who monitor. In fact, right now, like at this very moment, there's a commission meeting going on. So this is sort of the next step of this, and it's to approve the East Slope Mountain Lion Management Plan, which had 127 passed, that mountain lion management plan is out. Doesn't matter anymore. It's irrelevant. And interestingly enough, some of the same people involved in the campaign were also involved in other measures that failed in Colorado. 308, which was a
Yes.
Denver specific would have banned basically anything to do with fur. So
Yeah.
cowboy hats and, jackets and sweaters or whatever, anything to do with fur, but also fly fishing, lures as well. That failed as well. We put everything into, as far as effort, we put everything into this, into 127 because it was needed in Colorado, but it also really, I think, starts the next level of where us as hunters and outdoorsmen and women need to go, to really, it's been said so many times, but to really band together, for just that reason, for us to be unified on these big issues, but also understand that this won because of public education. And that, as far as Howl is concerned, that's what we are mainly concerned with. Educate the public on whatever it is that works. Is it about food? Is it about definitions? Is it about, trophy hunting? Well, what does that mean? Is it about just education on, hey, did you know that your state, has hundreds of employees who work on this day in and day out? They are professionals, just like there's professionals in every other line of work. Many people don't know that. And they're not perfect. These agencies are not perfect, but that is the place where the decisions and the discussions should take place, which are open to the public as well. Like this commission meeting that's going on, the public can be there. That's a part of it. But that's the best place to get all of the info out, all the data out. There's not a whole bunch of room for, there's no room for advertising, right? There's no room for propaganda. It's all discussed right there over multiple hours and multiple days and sometimes multiple months. Running a campaign on wildlife issues like this over the last year, where frankly anything can be said, that the truth is not, it doesn't really matter. It's just, who can do the best marketing is what it comes down to. That's not good for anybody. That's certainly not good for wildlife. Where you take in Colorado specifically, an agency that's been around for, 108 years or something like that, and in a few sentences on a ballot measure can just change all that.
Yep.
That's not, if people understood really what was at stake and the process that it's taking away, that's the thing, is that right, wrong, or indifferent, had this passed, it doesn't matter if people realize, oh, that was a mistake. You can't change it. It's now cemented.
That's right.
To change it, it would take like a super majority because it was passed in a ballot and all that. Nearly impossible. Like, that's just not good for anybody.
Yeah. Once it's there, it's there.
Yeah. The governor can't go, oh, you know what? This is a really bad situation. It can't be done.
Yeah.
So
yeah, once it's gone, it's gone.
Yeah. Yeah. And things like that, most people don't realize, and I wouldn't have realized it. Save not being involved in this kind of stuff. I didn't know anything 3 years ago. Most people don't. So this is an education problem.
And on other side of the country there, the complete opposite side, Florida had a big win that night as well. You want to talk about that and what that was?
Yeah. So Florida passed, and I knew this election night because the results came in early and they were very strong. Yeah. This was a constitutional amendment to have the right to make the right to hunt and fish a part of Florida's constitution, and they needed 60%, because it's a constitutional amendment. They needed 60% to pass, so that was a little scary. It could have been 59% of the people voted for it and it wouldn't have passed. Well, I think they ended up getting 67% or 66 point something percent. And that was fantastic. And what that basically means, because there was a lot of misinformation going around, like, all right, well, now you have the right to hunt, so now private property rights don't matter. No, that's already a constitutional right, and one doesn't override the other, right? And it's very clear, and they chose their language on this constitutional amendment very specifically and very simply also. Basically, nothing changes. If you hunt there and fish there, nothing changes. You still need to buy tags. There's still, limits and quotas and all that stuff. What changes is all wildlife decisions remain at the Florida Wildlife, we'll just call it the commission. They got a different name, but basically at the commission level. So the decisions that are made there now, that's where they stay. It can't be brought to a citizens initiative to change things. That's the best way, I think, to look at it. It stays with the experts.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And that was
yeah.
huge. So we actually, our involvement with that, besides some social media promotion, this was brought to the ballot through the legislature. So it wasn't in Colorado. The way that they did it was they had the public, they collected signatures, right, to get this on the ballot. In Florida, this was brought forth to the legislature by a congresswoman, I believe. It was either a congresswoman or a senator. It had to pass through the legislature, and that passed unanimously, save one vote. And that's where we were involved. Hal was involved 2 years ago, where we made the public aware of that and said, hey, if you support this, you can urge your representative, to get this passed. And I think we had to get it passed so it would be on the ballot. And I need to look this up, but we had, I think, it was either 130,000 or 160,000 of those messages go to Florida representatives through the Howell website on that. The residents of Florida voted overwhelmingly to get that passed. So that's a huge win. The way I look at that is Florida, saved their commission being, the right folks. Florida's safe. And that's kind of the way I look at most of the states that have the right to hunt and fish. They're all written a little differently. There's better ways to write it. If it's written correctly, to where it really protects the methods of take, and so on and so forth, those states are kind of safe. And where our job then is to, direct the commission to follow the department's science. And is the department's science up to date? Is it accurate? All that kind of stuff. Those are the kind of battles we want.
Seeing that public sentiment change is great. So do you feel that we're going to start to see more of a change across the states and across the continent?
Yes, I do. And I think this is also a springboard. It really puts the spotlight on what needs to be done, and that is public education. I mean, I grew up in Michigan, and in the 80s, I didn't know people didn't hunt, actually. So, seeing the deer on trucks and cars and the backs of trailers and all that was great for me. I mean, I was just like, yeah, people are out there hunting and they're bringing the meat back. They're not just bringing the heads back; they're bringing all the meat back. And I thought that was a fantastic thing. But where we failed is the only public education we had was essentially showing the killing of animals, because it became, on TV and all that. And I understand that. And I loved watching that, because it was like, I was just like watching the thing I like to go do, kind of a thing.
There.
But to the outsider looking in, they have, their own, there's no like relatability for them to that. And they're being told possibly a bunch of lies. This is why they're doing it, or this is what they're doing, or they're just murderers, and these species are going to go extinct or something like that. And people are just like, okay, well then why is this happening? And we weren't confronting that at all. We don't talk about those things. And that's what we need to do, is tell the whole story. And tell the reasons why, what management is, because management is a big part of it. What feeding ourselves with wild meat is, it's pretty simple to me. Most of the world eats meat, and you either get it from here or you get it from there. And I'm getting it from there. I'm getting it from the forest. I'm getting it from the wild. And when people, in my experience, when they find that out, And when they come into my house, they see a lot of mounts. They can say, "Oh, these are all the trophies." Yeah. And then you're going to have dinner with me, and we're going to eat all this we're going to eat all this meat, and, I'll take it to my freezer and all that. And it really changed, just simple things like that. Really changes people's perspectives. It's conversations, it's communication. We live in such a polarized world, and but when you actually sit down to talk to somebody, the differences are I think quickly dissolve,
Yeah.
and you just realize we're humans.
Yeah.
And yeah, some of us go out, and some of us we go out and we hunt, and it's not as bad as it's portrayed when we really get a chance to connect with people.
Yeah, I think that's an absolutely perfect way to end it there. It's about connecting with people, it's about education, and we've all got something in common if you just look past the first glance, right? So a huge thanks for all that you do, Charles. A huge thanks to Howell, and congratulations on a massive, massive win. And we expect to keep seeing them as we roll out these great campaigns. So huge thanks again for joining me today. For this segment of Wild Talk, I'm joined by Kenneth Thrall from Kifaru. Kenneth, thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm happy to talk. It's going to be fun.
Absolutely, it is. Kifaru is a well-known name in the outdoor spaces. So let's get right into it. What inspired the start of the company, and just give a little bit of a background on it?
Yeah. So Patrick Smith is the original beginner and creator of Kifaru. He actually started Mountain Smith. So if you've seen that company, he started, built it up, and then sold it. And then he went to Africa and just kind of hunting all over the place, hunting all over the world. And that's where Kifaru got its name. Is Kifaru is Swahili for rhino.
Okay.
Yep. So he just had a thing. He's like, I want to start a backpack hunting company, and he just went right into it. So it started in 1997. It's a 27-year-old company. So it's been around a long time, and he built up the company with backpacks, but also like teepee shelters. So a lot of the teepee shelters you see now were off the original design from Patrick. Around 2012, when Aaron Snyder came on, he kind of catapulted it up above, because it was always that direct consumer, kind of a niche little product. Like they'd get orders in, and then they'd have to build it like as it goes. So it would take months for you to get your pack, So Aaron kind of came in and just started, him and Patrick, just designing new products and everything like that, kind of streamlining a lot of the company. And since 2012 and Aaron starting, Kifaru has grown a mass, And 5 years ago, Aaron and Chad Shumway both bought the company from Patrick. So after Aaron and Chad took it over, they wanted to move out of Colorado and go to Wyoming. And that's when I started, was right in that move from like the whole transition from Wyoming, or from Colorado to Wyoming. But yeah, so now we're here. We have, still an American made company, 100% American made. So we have cut, sew, fabric, everything is here in the United States. And, there's not a lot of companies that say that or can say that. So we kind of take that with pride, and, still pushing as we're growing. It's been, kind of a bit of a hurdle to get over in terms of production and all that stuff, but we're doing pretty well. It's been fun.
You sure have. And in the last 10 years or so, you're 100% correct. The company's just seems to be on a rocket ship. It's everywhere. And there's new stuff being released constantly. I'm seeing it on social media, following your website. It's just, there's another pack coming. There's another TP coming, et cetera, et cetera. So can you walk me through a little bit of the design process when you're creating new gear, and what do you prioritize most with it?
Yeah. So Eric Bender, he's our head designer and everything like that. And he is, the man's a wizard when it comes to being able to get a concept of what we want and then put it into, AutoCAD, create it. And he can sew a bag that we want to make in a day. Like we could say like, hey, we want this idea. He'll have it up the next day, and we can go to testing it. So it's, the design process and everything like that is definitely nice because we have an Eric Bender. Not a lot of companies have that. They have to, if they have to send it overseas to get a sample, bring it back, do that whole thing. Like that's why we can come out with products so fast, is because we have the designer here. He can sew it up himself, and then we just go into testing, prototypes, stuff like that, and then just keep building it on. With bags, it's kind of pretty simple in the sense of creating a bag, then getting it out, because we've been a 27-year-old company and have so many different bags that we can look back at older stuff and kind of newer stuff and match it together. So he already has a lot of the templates for it, so he can just sew them up, and you kind of get a good concept of how that bag's going to work just by off of how it looks and everything. We want to test everything because Kifaru has always been based off of tough as can be, can haul as much weight as you want. So, and the real test you get to that is when you're packing out animals. There's no, you can throw a sandbag on there and like get a general feel, but the hind quarter of an elk compared to a sandbag or to feel a lot different. So
the process for Kifaru is literally start to finish, from design through completion and testing, is done in the United States and North America.
Yep.
That's mind-boggling to me, but it's what makes Kifaru such an industry standard and above. So how important is the customer feedback in your product development for the next evolution of what's coming out?
Yeah, it's very important. We always listen to everyone. Like, our customer service team is in-house. They're here. So, they get the feedback back from people that haven't, either they're having problems or honestly they'll suggest something. But yeah, it's awesome in that standpoint, just the customer feedback, and we always listen to everyone, so it's definitely big.
That's huge. There's nothing more annoying than you dial a customer service and it's push 1, push 3, push 4, leave a message, and you might get a phone call back.
Yeah.
And then you're trying to explain a situation to somebody who quite obviously has not spent a day in the field or worn the product that you're trying to talk about. And that's something else that puts you guys top notch. As we start to wrap this up, we've talked about innovation, and I want to know what's on the horizon for Kifaru. Like, there's got to be something coming out that you can kind of maybe tease towards, or maybe not.
Yeah. Well, I'll say the Ronde duffel, which is the big duffel that we're going to be coming out, that'll be coming out in the next few weeks. Kind of tentative date. I don't have a certain date, but that's going to be a huge duffel bag for traveling. And then we're always developing new stuff, like always on the docket, potentially new bags. I'll just say that, or old renditions of a new bag. So it's going to be, we're always testing and stuff like that. Some more EDC stuff that we're going to be coming out soon. We actually just finished up, testing one, and that will be out soon, which I think that's going to be a big key for us getting this product out. So, there's always stuff on the horizon for Kifaru. We're always trying to, we don't want to overload ourselves with stuff, but we honestly love gear just as much as anyone. So when Bender wants to make something, we're like all pumped about it. So it's
mad scientist is in the lab type.
Yeah, he's in there cooking and he's making some good stuff. So we want a little taste of it and test it out and everything, and kind of hit our missing holes that we have. And there's going to be a lot of stuff throughout the year, and that could be launched, definitely not like into this year, but into 2025. So it's good.
Excellent. Exciting times for the next year or so for hunters and those that want to enjoy the backcountry with some amazing products.
Yes.
So Kenneth, a huge thanks from us at Wild Talk and Wild TV for all that you do to support the outdoor industry. We'll have to do this again.
Hello everyone, Kate here, back at it with Kate's Wild Finds, just soaking up some of this beautiful fall weather. I recommend you do too, but not before we finish this episode of Wild Talk. So let's get into some clips in 3, 2, 1, let's go.
You're not afraid it's gonna break?
All this stuff that's going down really got me down this time. I've been down.
Alrighty everybody, that's it for me today. I'm gonna go take a hike, but stay tuned for more Wild Talk.
We are back with more Wild Talk. We are so stoked to share this episode with you. We have the PNW Huntress, Sarah Gamache. She's up next. Stay tuned.
Oh, thank you. Thank you guys for having me. I'm excited to dive into it. Well, my name's Sarah Gamache, and I am from Washington State, and I've lived here almost my whole life. My husband is military, so we have moved around a little bit just because of his military career, but we are currently back in Washington right now, which I'm excited to be back here. And yeah, I grew up in a hunting family. My dad started taking me out hunting when I was probably about 11 years old. And at that point, I kind of did it just as a way to spend time with him. I was young, so I didn't take it too seriously. But over the years, it really grew on me and became a huge part of my life. And the older I get, the more I fall in love with it. And it's kind of came full circle now because I have my own kids and now they're hunting. So yeah, it's pretty cool how it's kind of evolved over the years into that. Dawn had a lot to get caught up on as far as what being a military wife was going to entail. And we had kids right away too. So becoming a new mom and a new wife and that whole lifestyle. And we moved from Washington to Fort Campbell in Tennessee. And that was a big life change for me because I'd also never lived out of Washington State. And another challenge is, moving to different states because we went from there to North Carolina and try to figure out the hunting laws and look for public land and, then raising young kids at the time. So how am I going to have time to do this? But it's a really important part of my life and he knew that. And so we made it work. And I do a lot of hunting by myself. There's a lot of days when, he would watch the babies and I would go out in the woods and hunt and we made it work.
That was going to be my question is moving across the country, like somebody that like myself in British Columbia, I know my hunting rules and regulations and laws. What sort of, how did you make that work with going from Tennessee to Washington, back and forth, etc.?
Yeah, well, yeah. So in the United States, obviously every single state has completely different laws. And when I say completely different, I mean in Washington, you can shoot one deer a year, one elk a year. I mean, we have different types of deer too. We have blacktail, at least on the west side of the state where I'm from, and then obviously over in Tennessee, it's whitetail. And I just remember, I think I had to go through well, maybe my husband went through the hunter's education class because he was not a hunter when I met him. And sitting through that with him and hearing how many deer you could kill in Tennessee in a year if you did all the seasons and bought all the extra tags. And it was over 100 or something crazy. And I was like, what? Wait, what? I was like, in Washington, we can shoot one. Yeah, it was insane. Because you can go to different counties. I mean, so you have to read the rules and regs anytime you go to any state. And the game department, puts those out every year. And even in a state that you've hunted in your entire life, like in Washington, I still read them every year because there's constantly changes. So just because something was legal last year or you've been doing something your whole life, that might have changed. And if you don't know that and you're going out and breaking the law, you can't just tell them, well, I didn't know that it changed, because as a hunter, it's our obligation to keep up on that stuff. So yeah, it was a lot of putting in the time to read through all the regulations for wherever we were living at the time.
What was the quality of hunts like Tennessee versus Washington so far for you?
Well, I only hunted in Tennessee. I think we lived there for about a year and a half. So I only did one season there. And actually kind of funny story. I was in Walmart getting a license and this gentleman was in there and he saw me, and sometimes people see a woman by themselves buying a hunting license, catches them off guard. So he's like, "Are you buying a hunting license?" I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Oh, where are you going to be hunting at?" And I said, "I don't know. Honestly, I just moved here. I need to scout. I need to figure out where the public land is." And he said, "Well, me and my buddies are from Florida and we lease this farmland every year. We drive up here and you're more than welcome to come hunt with us." And I'm a very trusting person. I tend to trust everyone, and my husband is the opposite. He doesn't trust anyone, probably because of what his job entails. So we had only been married for a year and a half, and I remember going home all excited, "Oh, I found someone. I can go hunt with these guys from Florida," and I'm so excited. And he's just looking at me like, "What do you mean you're gonna go hunt with some dude you met in Walmart?" And I said, "Well, yeah." And he's like, "You're not worried about, maybe getting raped and killed or something?" And I was like, "I want to be able to do this," and I thank God he's a very understanding and supportive man, because I think any other husband would be like, "Absolutely not." But he said, "I'll go out there and I will meet these guys and I'll see where you're going to be, make sure I feel comfortable with the situation, and I'm okay with it." So it was 2 hours from our house, and he, went out there with me, met the guys, and I ended up going hunting with them the next day. And there was some good deer, as far as quality whitetail. there were some good deer out there. I didn't end up getting one that day with them, but they left shortly after and said, "Hey, you're welcome. We asked the farmer and he's okay with you coming out here hunting on your own." So I ended up, like, I think my daughter was a couple months old and my husband was staying home, and I was leaving at like 3 in the morning to go out to this property to get in the stand. And I ended up shooting a deer that year. So that was my experience in Tennessee. And then in North Carolina, we ended up hunting on base, because in most states you can hunt on like the Army bases, and those have their own set of rules. And it was kind of wonky. You had to like show up early, everyone would show up at the same time, and it was like a draw system for where you could hunt on post, and you had to like check in and check out. It was very complicated. I didn't end up getting a deer in North Carolina actually, and so then it wasn't until we moved back to Washington that I really picked up and started hunting hard again.
That Walmart thing has got me just. I don't think that would work for me too well. I have heard from buddies that live down there and people that are here in the interior of British Columbia that once you hunt blacktails, it gets into you, and it's almost like an obsession. So is that the same for you?
Yeah, I mean, I got really lucky a couple years ago and I shot a really nice blacktail. It's like, I think like top 5 in the state. So the only thing that I've really seen that's happened is since I shot that big one, I haven't hunted them as hard. Like if I have extra time, I've been hunting some other animals just because my schedule is so thinned out, because I'm like, man, I'll never be able to top this blacktail. But definitely like leading up to that, yes, like definitely very addicting. And it's just so much more rewarding when you get one, because you know how hard it is and you put so much time in. Like with whitetail hunting, you're seeing several deer a day. I mean, it's nonstop action for the most part if you're in a good spot. Where over here, I mean, you might go 4 or 5 days and not even see a doe, let alone a buck. So a lot of people will shoot any legal blacktail that they see. I mean, you're not trophy hunting these things. That's not how it goes. So if you shoot a 4-point blacktail, that's a
Right.
big deal, at least for Columbia blacktail over here. And so, yeah, I think that's part of it, of why it's addicting, is because it's so rewarding when you're successful, and it's such a good feeling, and you put in so much work that you're just like, man, this is awesome.
What triggered me there is you mentioned rosies. We've got rosies here in BC. We've also got Rockies, but rosies are exclusively a draw animal here. Are they open season there?
In Washington, it's just
Okay.
over the counter. Yep, just over the counter, even for non-residents. So if you want to come shoot a Rosie, you can buy for now. Who knows when
Oh
that's
yeah.
going to change? You know, more and more states. I mean, Colorado just did that. They just did away with their over-the-counter non-resident tags for elk. So um, it's expensive. I think we're one of the most expensive states for an elk tag. I think at least $800. Colorado is probably similar to that. I mean, I guess all the states are getting more expensive. That's the thing. I think we used to be, but that might, I mean, I know the prices just keep going up and up. So, yeah, I've actually never shot a Rocky Mountain elk before. I've hunted them before once in Colorado, but all mine are Roosevelt. So that's my passion, which for a lot of people, that's another bucket list animal in addition to the blacktail, you know, because there's only a select few states that have them, or in Canada. And I would say second to elk, my favorite hunt is the access deer. And so I've got a hunt at this spot in Maui for 2 years now, and it's such a target rich environment. They're actually like an invasive species over there. So the government is constantly trying to find ways to like eradicate them, because there's no predators. I can't remember which king back in the day brought them, you know, but anytime there's islands, like same with New Zealand, and you bring animals that are not native there and there's no predators, that's what happens, is that, you know, the population gets out of control. So basically it's up to the hunters to kind of manage that. And there's not even enough hunters to be able to manage these things. So there's a lot of them. So obviously, like having it be target rich environment, it's like action packed hunt, and it's all spot and stock. So, you know, doing 20-30 stalks a day, like go, and I was using my recurve too. So a lot of failed stalks, trying to get really close. They are very smart animals. And even though there's a lot of them, they're very hard to hunt. But I ended up shooting 3. I shot a doe and 2 bucks when I was there this year. And then the year before, same thing. I shot a doe and 2 bucks. And last year, so it's a friend of mine that takes me out. He owns a nonprofit with a couple guys on the island where they have people donate to their nonprofit, and they take them hunting, and then all the money that the people donate for the hunt goes to help feed the locals, like the homeless and the people that are, struggling basically on the island. So it's a really cool program, and I love supporting it. So that's like the second half of the reason why I like going over there and doing it with him. But last year when we first met and he took me out hunting, and when you hunt with someone that you don't know and haven't hunted with, you don't really know how it's going to go. And so he's like, well, like I'll guide you around and take you through, and and he's a very accomplished archery hunter. So he knew what he was doing. And so he guided me for the first part of the day, and I shot a doe. And it was like late afternoon. We were working our way back to the truck, and he was like, there's one more like big kind of draw, like creek area that the deer like to bed in. And I have a feeling, there's probably some deer in there. And he goes, you know what? You seem like an accomplished hunter. I've been hunting with you for the day. I'm going to stay back, and I'm just going to let you do this on your own. And I respected that. I think that's awesome when guides do that. And so I was like, okay, cool. So I like stalked up, to the edge, and I was like crawling, and then I like peeked up and looked, and I could see a bunch of antlers, and I knew there was like a bunch of bucks bedded down in this thing. I was like, oh, he was right. So I like found one that was quartered, like in the right direction. I knew I could hit it from where I was at, and I ranged it, and I think it was like 42 yards. So I got to my knees and I drew my bow back, and then I stood up and I shot it, and I hit it, and all these deer just go flying out of this draw. And I mean, there had to have been like 80 in there, 80 to 100 deer, and they're just going every which direction. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. And I didn't, it was hard for me to watch where my buck had gone because there was like so much chaos all at once, but I knew I hit him good. So I waited there for about 5 minutes, kind of keeping an eye on things. And then my buddy Sean walked over and he's like, how'd it go? And I said, oh, I shot one. And he was like, oh, sweet. And we were talking, like normal voices, celebrating. And then I heard something, and I was like, wait, I hear something. I look over, and there was like one straggler buck that was, taking his time. He didn't go with the others, and he was going up the hillside. And I knocked an arrow fast, and I pulled back and I shot him. And Sean was like, what just happened? He's like, you just shot 2 bucks? And I was like, yeah. So they both piled up like 30 yards from where I shot them. And it was exciting. It was an exciting action-packed day. And I told him, I was like, I need to come back every year and do this. And so he invited me back this year. And so I got back in May from that hunt.
I just talking about the camouflage there. I just saw a video recently on Facebook. It's like a 15-20 second reel that shows up in your feed, and it says, how many deer do you see? And it's this great big mule deer standing there on a hillside, and you watch it for 10 seconds, then boom, and it drops, and you see about 10 deer just explode out of the sagebrush. You're like, I didn't even see them. You watch it 4 or 5 times. I'm showing my wife and my daughter. I'm like, how many deer do you see? And if you watch it 4 or 5 times, you're like, okay, I can see it there now, but you just get so target focused. I couldn't imagine seeing 80 or whatever just explode out and having the presence of mind to stay on your target.
Like for new hunters, I always try to encourage going places, target rich environments where you're going to have opportunity. Like very rarely am I going to tell someone go public land elk hunt as a new hunter, because you're probably going to end up hating hunting and quitting, and it's very discouraging. And so yeah, Hawaii is awesome. You can take your family with, like if it's a husband where he hunts and the wife doesn't, it's like one of those things you can get away with where you're like, hey, but we're going to go to Hawaii. I'll be hunting while I'm there, but you can be on the beach.
Mm-hmm. I think that's key, though, is you mentioned getting new hunters into it, is to put them in a target-rich environment, because the easiest way to recruit and keep hunters is show them that it's accessible and there are opportunities. That's a great way to end it there.
Yeah, thank you guys. Stay in touch, and I'll keep you posted on how my hunts go.